Good morning, distinguished speakers, colleagues, representatives of international organizations, members of the maritime and scientific communities, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of REMPEC, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this regional webinar entitled The Hidden Threat Beneath the Waves, Underwater Noise in the Mediterranean. I would first like to express our sincere appreciation to our UNEP partner, OceanCare, for the excellent cooperation in organizing this important webinar, as well as to all speakers and participants joining us today from across the Mediterranean region and beyond. The Mediterranean Sea is globally recognized for its exceptional biodiversity and ecological importance. At the same time, it is one of the busiest maritime regions in the world, with intense shipping activity, port operations, and maritime traffic that continue to grow year after year. While shipping remains fundamental for trade, economic development, and regional connectivity, it is also increasingly important to address its environmental impacts in a comprehensive manner. In this regard, underwater radiated noise has become an issue of growing international concern. Scientific research has demonstrated that underwater noise can have significant effects on marine life, particularly marine mammals and other sensitive species, by interfering with communication, navigation, feeding, migration, and reproduction. Because sound travels efficiently underwater, the cumulative impacts of anthropogenic noise can extend far beyond the immediate source. Recognizing these challenges, REMPEC has progressively integrated underwater radiated noise into its broader work on sustainable and environmentally sound shipping in the Mediterranean. In this context, the Mediterranean Strategy for the Prevention of, Preparedness for, and Response to Marine Pollution from Ships, adopted by the contracting parties to the Barcelona Convention in 2021, provides an important regional framework for advancing sustainable shipping and addressing emerging environmental challenges associated with maritime transport. This strategy promotes enhanced cooperation, innovation, capacity building, and the reduction of the environmental footprint of shipping activities in the region. In cooperation with the UNEP Barcelona Convention system, the International Maritime Organization, and regional and international partners, REMPEC has supported efforts aimed at increasing awareness and understanding of underwater noise and its impacts. This has included promoting dialogue among Mediterranean coastal states and stakeholders, contributing to regional discussions on environmental pressures from shipping, supporting the dissemination and improvement of IMO guidance related to the reduction of underwater radiated noise from commercial shipping, and encouraging cooperation between maritime administrations, environmental authorities, scientists, and industry representatives. REMPEC also recognizes the importance of strengthening regional capacity, improving data and knowledge sharing, and supporting practical mitigation approaches that can contribute to quieter and more sustainable maritime transport in the Mediterranean region. Today's webinar provides an excellent opportunity to advance these discussions further. We are honored to have with us a distinguished group of experts who will address the various dimensions of this issue, from the scientific understanding of underwater noise and its impacts on marine species, to international policy developments, regional monitoring initiatives, technology innovation, and practical mitigation measures. I would particularly like to thank our speakers and panelists for sharing their expertise and perspectives with us today. I encourage all participants to actively engage during the discussions and the Q&A session. Addressing underwater noise requires collaboration across sectors and disciplines, and webinars such as this one of today are essential to fostering dialogue, cooperation, and collective action. Allow me once again to thank OceanCare, our speakers, moderators, and all participants for contributing to this important initiative. I wish you all a productive and successful webinar. Thank you for your attention. At this stage, I pass the floor to our colleague from OceanCare, Carlos. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivan, and good morning, everyone, and also welcome from my side to this REMPEC regional webinar on underwater radiated noise. First of all, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you also for all the panelists for accepting our invitation to this important webinar. We hope you find this webinar useful in your work for protecting the Mediterranean marine environment. My name is Carlos Bravo, and as I work for OceanCare, we have helped organize this REMPEC webinar because we are coordinating the international working group on this topic as part of the REMPEC's Mediterranean strategy. Let me give you a brief introduction to OceanCare for those who are not yet familiar with it. OceanCare is an international non-governmental organization dedicated to marine conservation. It was founded in 1989. Our aim is to protect and restore the marine environment and marine wildlife. We carry out much of our work to protect the marine environment within the framework of a number of international conventions of which we are an active member, including, amongst others, the General Fisheries Commission for the Mediterranean, the Agreement on the Conservation of Cetaceans in the Black Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, and the contiguous Atlantic area, ACOBAMS, and of course, the Barcelona Convention, UNEP map. We are also an active member of REMPEC, of course, and we are very grateful for this opportunity to help REMPEC to organize this webinar and participating in the Mediterranean strategy. Before introducing the first speaker, I would like to remind you that you can post your questions in the question and answer section that can be accessed with the corresponding icon. There you can find more detailed instructions how to do it. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our first keynote speaker, Mr. Russell Lipa, who will be speaking on underwater noise, its impact on marine species, and the main mitigation measures. Russell has been a member of the International Whaling Commission Scientific Committee since 1999, including convening working groups and a workshop on noise and contributing to the International Whaling Commission input on noise at the IMO. He has regularly attended meetings of the IMO Marine Environment Protection Committee, the MEPC, and has published a number of papers on reducing noise from commercial shipping and evaluation of mitigation measures from other noise sources. He is also a member of the Technical Group on Noise, TG Noise, advising the European Commission on the implementation of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. Thank you once again, Russell, for accepting our invitation to take part in this webinar. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. As Carlos mentioned, I'll kind of give a sort of brief overview of many of the noise issues, particularly from elsewhere outside the Mediterranean. and focus on some of the background issues to set the scene for the further discussions during the morning. I first started trying to study whales acoustically around 30 years ago from a sailing research vessel operated by the International Fund for Animal Welfare. And we soon realized that in areas of heavy shipping or seismic surveys, we had to often give up our studies because of the amount of underwater noise. So that really brought it home to me, the effects this was likely to have on the animals. And although there have been concerns about the effects of noise on marine mammals for several decades, it's only more recently that evidence has emerged kind of right across the ecosystem, from zooplankton to mollusks to crustaceans and commercial fish species. And there's now kind of clear evidence of harmful impacts of underwater noise throughout the whole ecosystem. And for most of the species that are potentially vulnerable, where this has been investigated, there's been evidence of impacts. This isn't really a surprise because we all know how a noisy environment affects us, and marine life is much more reliant on sound than we are. So international efforts to address noise have greatly expanded in the last 20 years. The International Maritime Organization, IMO, started in 2008 on work on underwater radiated noise from shipping. And at the same time, the International Whaling Commission endorsed targets for reducing noise from shipping based on data that showed large increases in ambient noise levels over previous decades. And that target was to reduce the overall contribution from shipping by 3 dB in 10 years and 10 dB in 30 years. Quite a simplistic target, but at the time it kind of set the scene for what might be realistic and achievable. And also in 2008, the European Union adopted its Marine Strategy Framework Directive with indicators for noise in order to achieve good environmental status. And within the regional seas, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and HELCOM have both developed regional action plans on noise, and 𝗧𝗵𝗲 has the objective of reducing sound input across the board. The IWC Scientific Committee has discussed noise on a number of occasions and agreed that in order to meet UN Sustainable Development targets with respect to reducing pollution, there is a need to reduce underwater noise. And in 2018, the IWC adopted a consensus resolution on anthropogenic underwater noise that recognized the importance of sound to cetaceans and also the potential that noise was having to adversely affect populations. Convention on Migratory Species also has an adopted resolution from 2017 and developed guidelines for environmental impact assessment with respect to noise generating activities. And more recently, the IMO has adopted its revised guidelines on reducing noise from shipping in order to minimize adverse effects on marine life and developed an action plan. This followed earlier guidelines that the IMO had developed in 2013, and the revised guidelines were really motivated by the kind of lacking or limited uptake with the 2013 guidelines, and the action plan is a way to ensure that uptake is improved. At the moment, the IMO is in an experience.
I'm very sorry. We can still see the first slide. Is this correct?
Yes, I don't have very many slides.
Okay. No, don't worry. Thank you so much.
I was just hoping that I would sort of talk rather than show slides.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much. Sorry for the interruption.
But yeah, I can move on to the next slide now, which when we're looking at descriptors for underwater noise, these are often divided into two components related to what has been termed either impulsive or continuous sources. These are pressure indicators, and within the EU MSFD, impulsive sound is monitored through a register of sources, while continuous sound is monitored through a network of measurement stations and modeling. And I've just highlighted in red there what probably the most important sources within the Mediterranean. So shipping and distant seismic would be considered as continuous sources in terms of raising ambient noise levels. And military sonar has obviously been a key issue within the Mediterranean because of the effect on beaked whales and the mass strandings of those that we've seen amongst the impulsive sources. So, yeah, a key issue with noise is really what we're trying to avoid in terms of impacts. And in the context of the Marine Strategy Directive, this looks at the spatial and temporal distribution of noise plus the levels. And the aim is that these don't exceed levels that adversely affect populations of marine animals. So this is very much looking at a population and ecosystem level rather than an individual animal level. But in order to do that, we do need to understand the impacts and particularly how much noise exposure is too much. And there's a number of kind of factors that will combine to have an impact on an individual or a local population, and that can then lead on to an assessment of the impact on populations as a whole. And just working around these, displacement from preferred habitat can either be short-term or long-term. We know from our own experience and all the information we have about the impacts of noise on human health. Masking is a really important impact from continuous noise that can stop animals being able to detect predators or to communicate or to find their prey if their sounds are masked by high noise levels. Noise can also have impacts on prey that can impact on higher predators. And there can be effects on behavior, and particularly the situation with beaked whales that I mentioned in response to sonar. This is a behavioral response, but that has very serious implications for the individuals that often end up stranding. And there can be effects on physiology, and we've seen that with the shipping noise and right whales off the east coast of the US and Canada, where shipping noise has been associated with elevated levels of stress hormones. So just focusing on shipping, which is the major human activity causing ambient noise levels to be increased throughout all the global ocean basins. And the propeller is the dominant source of noise associated with cavitation. And so cavitation is small bubbles forming in the water and bursting, which create broadband noise, and there are also tonal components associated with the rotation of the propeller. So it's a combination of tonal noise and broadband noise. Fortunately, there are several methods by which noise from individual vessels can effectively be reduced, and the IMO has been looking at this for some time, and that's the basis of the guidelines. When the guidelines were first developed, the IMO recognized the need to take action and that uncertainties to the effects shouldn't preclude efforts to developing quieting technologies. And it's also become clear that in many cases, measures to improve fuel efficiency and reduce greenhouse gas emissions can also reduce noise. So there can be some economic drivers that reduce noise, although this isn't always the case. Also, different ships create very different levels of noise, and the noisiest 15% of ships contribute more than 50% of the total noise energy. So it's quite clear which ships could be the main focus of noise reduction methods. And often the noisiest vessels are the ones that would benefit most from retrofit modifications that could reduce noise. And in the short term, there are several operational measures that can reduce noise, but the key one of these is the effectiveness of reducing speed. And this graph just highlights that. This shows the relationships that have been measured between the acoustic footprint, which is essentially the sound energy that a ship is putting into the water, and the operational speed as a proportion of its normal operational speed. Much of these data have come from the ECHO program run by the Port of Vancouver, but we've also included some other studies here, and you can see they all follow the same general relationship, although there's quite a lot of variation. But typically, if a ship was to reduce its speed to 85% of its normal operational speed, that could cut its noise emissions to 50%. This only applies to vessels with fixed pitch propellers. Those with controllable pitch propellers, which is a relatively small proportion of the global fleet, have a different relationship between noise and speed. Although I've focused on shipping, I think another source that will be of concern in the Mediterranean region are seismic surveys using air guns. These air guns are now a rather old technology, and it's been very difficult to control the source levels, and there's limited scope to reduce unwanted sound without developing new technologies. There have been modifications to air guns that have reduced some of the higher frequency sound, which isn't used as part of a seismic survey. There's also other techniques being trialed, such as marine vibrators and vibroseis, which have a much lower peak source level for the same amount of useful signal. These aren't commercially used very much yet, but are certainly a promising technique that needs to be evaluated further. But the current mitigation to reduce impacts from seismic, several strategies. Firstly, are trying to avoid times when sensitive species are present, but I think that's unlikely to be possible for most seismic surveys in the Mediterranean because there's not many situations where species are absent during certain periods of the year in in the Mediterranean. Most mitigation for seismic surveys has attempted to reduce the risk of injury to sensitive species through either ramping up the signal in the hope that animals will move out the way, or shutting down based on sightings from marine mammal observers or passive acoustic monitoring. But these mitigation measures don't do anything to reduce disturbance, and they have been shown to have rather limited value in reducing injury. Minimizing the sound levels has been shown to be much more effective, although it's very hard to demonstrate that a particular survey has used a minimum sound level. But just to sort of go back to the sort of international context and the measures that could be taken for shipping, we have a sort of interplay between the IMO guidelines and requirements under things like the EU Marine Strategy Framework and Regional Seas Conventions Action Plan. So the IMO guidelines very much affect actions by vessel operators and owners that could affect the noise levels from individual ships, and these have to be tied to other requirements on individual ships, such as energy efficiency and the carbon intensity indicator, and all the measures to try and reduce greenhouse gas emissions from shipping. Whereas with the measures taken under the MSFD and Regional Seas Conventions are much more at an ecosystem level, to try and reduce overall sound levels within certain areas. And that's where the threshold values developed under the MSFD come in. And there's a process that for kind of evaluating whether good environmental status is achieved, which sort of begins with defining the assessment area or the marine reporting unit. Then there's a need to choose an indicator species within that marine reporting unit, and to set the noise level for that species, which is considered to be the 𝗨, which is the level of onset of biological effects. So the idea with this is that the 𝗨 is the level of sound at which some effect that's detrimental to the animal will be happening. This can either be an absolute sound level or an excess level, or within the TG noise group, there's been a discussion that it probably needs to be both. So an absolute level would be the level at which the total sound combined between natural sources and anthropogenic sources begins to have an effect on the animal, whereas the excess level is the amount of anthropogenic sound increase relative to natural levels. And different species in different situations may respond to either absolute or excess. So having thresholds on both is probably going to be the most likely thing that's successful in detecting or managing an impact. Once an indicator species has been chosen and that there's within a particular assessment area and a value of the 𝗨 has been chosen, then it's possible to assess whether the marine reporting unit is in good environmental status. And this is done with the threshold values, and which are based on the area of the indicator species habitat, which has noise levels averaged over 1 month, which exceed the lobe, and that this shouldn't exceed 20% of the area in any 1 month. So it's done on an area and a time basis. And if an area is not in GES, then there's a requirement to develop a program of measures, including targets that might lead towards achieving GES. And there are a number of challenges with implementing these threshold values. First, there's a need to choose indicator species, and I know within the Mediterranean that one of the species that's been suggested is the fin whale, which has a wide-ranging distribution within the basin and is known to be particularly susceptible to noise, and particularly low-frequency noise. So shipping would be a major concern for fin whale. But then there's a need to set a value for the lobe, and this is proving particularly challenging. I think values that have been suggested for excess level have been between 6 dB and 20 dB, and that's a very big range, and it's quite hard to find kind of a scientific justification for these values. But I think we can look to other studies, particularly with effects on human health, that have shown that if noise levels are at the sort of lower end of that 6 to 20 dB excess, they can still have effects on human health. So I think we need to kind of combine all the information we can across a range of species when we're looking at lobe values, and include our own experience of impacts on human health. And the other challenge is selecting the assessment area. This ideally would be the population habitat, or the habitat of the population. The problem is that for most indicator species, we don't have very good information on the population structure. And where this has been an issue in other organizations, such as IWC, looking at lethal takes, the approach has been to divide assessment areas into smaller areas based on potential for these to be subsections of the population. And I think that could be a very good approach for the MSFD, is to have small areas that reflect uncertainty in population structure. But yeah, I've probably gone into quite a lot of detail there rather quickly, but I'll stop now, and happy to take any questions later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Russell, for your very in-depth presentation, for keeping to the allotted time. There are a couple of questions in the question and answer channel, but I think that as in order to be on time, we are going to ask the people have posted these questions to wait till the question and answer session after the expert roundtable. So thank you very much, Russell. We are going to count on you also in the expert roundtable. So see you later. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. ฎ Ď Ď Ď, who is going to tell us about an important international initiative. It is the High Ambition Coalition for a Quiet Ocean. Also talk about its objectives and how to participate in it. Aurélie is a policy advisor on the Marine Environmental Protection Policy team at Transport Canada. She leads Canada's international engagement at the IMO to advance collaboration and action on underwater-related noise from shipping, and manages the development of domestic policies, including noise reduction targets and vessel management plans. Aurélie brings over a decade of experience in marine conservation, science policy integration, and stakeholder engagement. Prior to joining Transport Canada, she worked with NGOs, academia, and international organizations on marine biodiversity protection, sustainable fisheries, and ocean governance. She holds a PhD in biology from Dalhousie University, and her work bridges science and policy to support evidence-based decision-making in marine environmental protection, with a particular focus on the impact of shipping on marine mammals. I would like to thank you also, Aurélie, for kindly accepting our invitation to take part of this event, especially given the extra effort involved in doing so from Canada with a significant time difference. So thank you very much again, and over to you, Aurélie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carlos, and good early morning, at least from Canada. It's a pleasure to be with all of you today. And I will just see if the PowerPoint is showing slowly.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Perfect. Wonderful, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no, thank you so much, Carlos. Yeah, so you pretty much, thanks for the introduction and the invitation for joining you today. Our team is the Marine Protection Division at Transport Canada. So as Carlos said, we oversee all our work at the International Maritime Organization on environmental matters, including underwater noise. But our team also oversees the analysis, development, and implementation of our national vessel operational measures. So that include our long-standing partnership with the Port of Vancouver and the ECHO program and the large-scale voluntary slowdowns that we have on our west coast of Canada. But today, I'm very pleased to talk to you about the High Ambition Coalition for a Quiet Ocean. So this is a very exciting initiative that we have started just a year ago with Panama, and I'm very glad to be able to talk more about it today. So next slide. I'm not seeing the next slide, just on my end. I don't know if you can move to the next slide.
There is the next slide. I'm sorry.
Oh, great. Perfect, thank you. So before I get into this, I just wanted to take also a moment to reflect on why Canada has renewed its work at the IMO a couple of years ago. So it brings me back at home to Canada's West Coast specifically, but it's not just on Canada's West Coast, it's across our coast, both on the East and the Arctic as well. But let's go back to the West Coast of Canada, particularly the home of our endangered southern resident killer whale population, which is protected under our national legislations. So this is an area where we have implemented a number of operational mitigation measures and supported research, development, and demonstrations of quieter technology, including tug electrifications and design-based work with our BC ferries, which are a large contributor of noise in the region. It's also the region known for the Port of Vancouver ECHO program, which I mentioned earlier, where we have large-scale voluntary slowdowns for commercial vessels. So the ECHO program is strongly supported by our government. It's been extremely successful with a high participation rate of over 85%. It's a voluntary program, and it really achieves significant reductions in underwater noise in the region. Today, we're also exploring how to continue evolving those measures. So we're exploring extensions of those slowdowns, as well as possible dynamic management approaches to further really optimize those acoustic benefits, but also minimize the impact on the industry. But that said, the reality is that despite all of those efforts, the southern resident killer whales continue to face major acoustic challenges. So for example, our latest science is demonstrating that vessel noise during the summer exceeds ambient levels by more than 10 dB, that effectively really reduce heavily the communication and echolocation space of that species by 80 to 90%. So the region really continues to face significant pressure from vessel noise, and it's not only from a species at risk perspective, it's really affecting the whole marine biodiversity in the region. So I know that's something that probably all of you are experiencing to some extent in your own region, including the Mediterranean. And as we're continuing looking, forecasting in the future, we know that there's going to be more commercial shipping coming through in the region, as we have a number of projects that are ongoing or in development. And so what that means is the habitat will be even under more pressure in the coming years. So we're essentially facing a systematic and a global issues that ultimately will need some help, and will need the IMO to help us address, and all of you as well that are here today. So next slide, please. So that's why Canada, we're very pleased to join Panama in co-leading the High Ambition Coalition for a Quiet Ocean. The coalition was launched last summer in 2025 at the UNOC conference in Nice. It was apparently a beautiful event on the water. It brought together high-level representatives from many countries, including as well the European Commission, the IMO Secretary General, BIMCO, the industry, Inuit Circumpolar Council, and environmental and ENGO. We really came together with the spirit around the understanding that underwater noise is a growing threat to our oceans and biodiversity, and that we really needed to start working together to raise this issue and help drive action. So next slide. So we're very grateful that today there's 38 countries that are members of the coalitions, including many of some of you on this call that are represented. We have actively worked together over the last year, really to try to set the coalition in good motions and to a successful future. The coalition brings together countries from Europe, North and Central South America, including Chile and Costa Rica, who are also lead pilot countries under the IMO GLONOIS partnership. And I know you'll hear more from this partnership from 𝗧𝗵𝗲 a little bit later. So over the past year, the coalition has been really active as well to try to share more information about the coalition and to expand the membership. We've hosted several events on the margin of IMO meetings, including our most recent one that was during MEPC 84, just a little bit earlier this year. It was held at the Belgium Embassy residency in London. So we're again thanking Belgium for a very welcoming event. And next slide. Next slide.
You have the next one, declaration action points.
Oh, I don't see it on my end. That's okay. I may have a little lag, Canadian lag. Okay, so so if you see the declaration point, the collective vision of the coalition is represented by the declaration, which has been signed by the member state at the ministerial level. So in addition to raising awareness, as I mentioned, and fostering a sense of urgency to address the issue of underwater noise, the declaration contains 4 pillars that countries commit to advance. It is on a voluntary basis, and so it is very much given the unique national circumstances. But the 4 pillars are advancing new policy at the IMO to support the design and operation of quieter ships, creating marine protected areas that account for natural ocean soundscape, reducing vessels' impact on sensitive marine wildlife through practical and effective measures, and supporting capacity building and sharing tools, data, knowledge to assess and reduce ocean noise. For example, promoting tools that are developed through the GLONOIS partnership. Next slide. Perfect. So this is a very much a member state driven coalitions. but it is supported by a very mighty team of executive secretariat composed of 5 ENGOs. And our work focused also on 3 broad areas of collective action on those main pillars that I mentioned earlier. Those are raising global awareness on underwater noise, promoting science-based solutions, and strengthening our international cooperations. Those are really the area which we want to amplify and start beginning to track as the coalition continues to grow and mature over time. Next slide. So we've been quite busy the last year because we wanted to develop a few tools and resources to support members. So first, we've been maintaining a list of focal points and technical experts, so that helps members connect more together and exchange information more easily. We have developed a first annual work plan, which really tracks those multilateral activities, so things like workshops, side events, joint submissions, that really are there to support the spirit of the declarations. We have a public website that is which you can access the declarations, the list of memberships. There's also a new tab resource that really brings together some key references on underwater noise. We have recently launched a quarterly newsletter, which provides update on this work plan, upcoming events, opportunity for collaborations, as well as country highlight sections. So we don't really track national initiatives, but we thought it was important and interesting to give space to members to also showcase interesting work happening in their own waters. So in the newsletter, there will be an opportunity to do so. There's also a communication toolkit that is available in 3 languages. That toolkit really gives membership ability to use different access logo and to be able to start sharing information about this high ambition coalition. And later this year, we'll hold our first end of year virtual meeting, which will bring together the focal points from each countries, and we'll have a roundtable to discuss progress, needs, priorities. How do we see this high ambition coalition continuing and moving and growing? And finally, because the IMO is such a central to our success, we've also created the 𝗧𝗵𝗲 collaborative group. We meet ahead of relevant IMO sessions to discuss the URN agenda, share our views, and coordinate actions when it's possible. So you have a QR code. You'll have access to those slides later on, but there's a QR code if you're interested to subscribe and read the High Ambition Coalition newsletter. And next slide. Okay, so the coalition is voluntary and it's opt-in, but we are committed to stay actively engaged with one another. So HAC members are expected to take part in at least one of the HAC activity each year, share relevant experience or events for the work plan, identify opportunity for collaborations, keep their country contact information up to date, and participate in HAC meetings. So by doing so, we really want to keep the coalition moving forward and building a steady momentum toward ultimately a quieter and healthier ocean. Next step. So quite easy if you wish to join this movement, this initiative. You simply have to email my colleague in Panama. So Panama is the lead country, really. Canada join them in this initiative. So they will be able to send you a formal invitation letter with as well a welcoming package with further information on the HAC, and as simply as that, and then you can join us. Next slide. However, the coalition, we accept new members at any time, but we also create opportunity for ministers to formally sign the declaration at high-level ocean events. So the next signing ceremony will take place in Mombasa, Kenya, during our ocean conference, which is happening in a couple of weeks. And there will be a HAC event on June 17 during lunchtime. So if you're interested about this event, or this would be meaningful for your government, please do reach out to Panama for further information. And we really hope you'll be able to join us. Next slide. So last but not the least, I really wanted to briefly highlight where we're at the IMO on underwater noise and what's coming next. 2026 is really an important year. We're already reaching the end of the first 3 years of the experience building phase under the revised URN guidelines, which has been in effect since 2023. We've made some solid progress. The IMO hosted a second workshop on energy efficiency and URN. And from this and all the knowledge gathered, we've also created a new circular, what's on the relationship between URN and energy efficiency at both the design and retrofit stage. This circular also outlines some of the type of information and experience that would also be useful to gather during the next 2 years of this experience building phase up till 2028. We've also agreed to advance on a global URN study. We see this as a critical piece of work to really inform our future policy development at the IMO. We're looking forward to the Secretariat assessment at MEPC 85, which will outline the pathways for delivering this study. And Canada, with other HAC co-sponsors, have also submitted a proposal to the last MEPC 84 meeting, and we wanted to advance one of the priority actions on our IMO URN action plan, which is the development of a policy roadmap. So we believe this is an important step because the committee at the moment is now dealing with several strands of work under the URN agenda, including ship design, area-based approach, technical elements that were identified at the Ship Design and Construction Subcommittee. And so we feel that without this clearer roadmap, there's really a risk that those pieces move in isolations, making it harder for member states and industry to see how the work fits together and how we should progress this work moving forward. So we really strongly believe that this roadmap will help sequence the issues at the committee level and really help us advance design-based considerations, how to structure area-based framework, and how mid and long-term approaches really could be organized over time. And then ultimately support a future decision on regulating underwater noise. So we encourage all of you to really reflect on this idea and draw on lessons learned and from perhaps other international noise management framework. The IMO is not the first transportation sector that is dealing with noise. Our AKO colleagues in aviation have been thinking about this for quite some time and have a very interesting international framework in place. So we're encouraging all of you to share your views at MEPC 85 meeting, which will be held at the end of this year, the first week of December. And just wanted to, did I change the slide? Yes, okay, yes. And then just because the submission deadlines are coming very quickly, and so we wanted to highlight this for you all today. And the next slide. Wonderful, so with that, I would like to thank you all for your attention and invite you to consult the website of the HAC if you're interested to hear more about it, or just also email me myself or my colleague from Panama. So thanks so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Aurélie, for those very valuable insights on the High Ambition Coalition for Quiet Oceans. I would like to ask you one question, even if we are a little bit out of the schedule, but I think it's important because taking advantage of your presence here. The question is, while the objective of the High Ambition Coalition certainly is to promote progress of ocean noise reduction at the international scale, the declaration is quite specific also about promoting the implementation of effective area-based management measures. So with the Mediterranean being a kind of laboratory with 3 entry points, the Strait of Gibraltar, just the Suez Canal, but also the Phosphorus accessing the Black Sea, can you describe your view about the potential of the progress in such a situation to reduce ocean noise emission and the respective proper monitoring in this area?
Thank you, Carlos. Yeah, I think you are right to say that the Mediterranean offers very interesting case studies and how this will play with the IMO. The way I see things evolving at the IMO is twofold. I think that the global study that we're really hoping to move ahead over the next 2 years will really anchor our evidence base globally, right, on how and where we're at with underwater noise. But one of the goals of that study was also to try to establish long-term targets, reduction targets. And then operational measures comes in as well. And I think this will come through either, revision of PSSA in the context. There's also the BBNJ work output that was proposed at the last meeting. So how are we going to look into area-based in those contexts? We'll need to have further conversation. But essentially the two comes together, and it comes in mind. I mentioned briefly at the end of my presentation the ICAO framework on noise. This is from the aviation sector, but they have a balanced approach, and they struggle with the same issue we're struggling, but 25 years ago, which was essentially, if we're continuing increasing traffic, we will never be able to address simply with operational measures our issues locally or regionally. We will need to target source level. And so the framework is quite interesting, and I think it has a lot of parallel with the challenges we're facing now today at the IMO. So I cannot speak specifically to the Mediterranean and how pieces will work together. I think there's room for developing short-term operational measures, and then the longer term would be to continue working on reducing source level for large commercial vessels, that's for sure, and smaller vessels as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Aurélie, for your answer. So now we are going to take a short break, after which we'll begin the expert roundtable, which will be moderated by my dear colleague Valérie Pimentel. She's an environmental lawyer and has been working with OceanCare in her role as legal officer for the last 3 years. And together with me, she coordinates the REMPEC International Working Group on underwater noise. But now we are going to take the short break, so that Valérie will start the next session. And please don't log off during the break. We will start at 1:05. Thank you very much.
So, good morning, everyone. Welcome back from a short break. Thank you, Carlos, for the presentation. My name is Valérie Pimentel. I'm the legal officer at OceanCare, and I will be guiding you through the second session of today. After the very insightful presentations in the first session, we will now move into the second part of today's webinar, the expert roundtable discussion on underwater noise in the Mediterranean. During the first session, we heard about the impacts of underwater noise on marine life by Russell, the growing international attention to this issue and emerging efforts to mitigate these emissions by states, for example, through the High Ambition Coalition for a Quiet Ocean. The second session aims to build on that foundation by looking more closely at the practical, scientific, technical, and governance dimensions of addressing underwater noise, specifically in the Mediterranean region. Importantly, this discussion comes at a timely moment. Within UNEP MAP framework, underwater noise indicators have now been adopted at the last COP24 at the Barcelona Convention at the end of last year, 2025, as part of the Integrated Management Assessment Program, which intends to implement the ecosystem approach, being the integrated strategy adopted by the contracting parties to the Barcelona Convention to manage human activities sustainably and achieve good environmental status. This marks an important step towards regional underwater noise monitoring and assessment with a clear objective towards its mitigation. So today's panel brings together experts from international organizations, regional institutions, science and technical innovation. We hope this discussion will help identify not only the challenges, but also the opportunities and practical pathways for Mediterranean countries and stakeholders to advance action in underwater noise. The format of this session will be as follows. Each speaker will first give a short presentation of approximately 8 to 10 minutes. I would kindly ask all speakers to keep their presentations to this allocated time so that we have sufficient time for the panel discussion and the questions from the participants. And after all the presentations, I will ask a number of guiding questions to the panel, and we will then open the floor to questions from the attendees. I kindly ask you to submit your questions through the Q&A function that you see in the bottom of the Zoom screen. And for any questions that cannot be answered during today's session due to time restraints, you can always send us your questions to our email info@oceancare.org, and we can forward it to the respective speaker. So although each speaker will begin with a short presentation, I would also like to encourage an interactive discussion among the panelists through the session. So please feel free to ask questions and react to each other's remarks. And without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Ms. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗪𝗃, Glow Noise Project Manager at International Maritime Organization. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 is an experienced maritime professional specialized in maritime policies and blue economy, currently managing the Glow Noise Project at the International Maritime Organization. With a background in science and technology policies, as well as maritime policies and project management, she has taken active role in the development and implementation of numerous EU and World Bank projects. So welcome, 𝗧𝗵𝗲, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Valérie. Thank you very much, and good afternoon and good morning, actually, dear colleagues and participants. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present in this webinar today. As from the Mediterranean basin, I'm more than happy to join this important regional discussion on the underwater radiated noise in the Mediterranean. The region has quite dense shipping routes and sensitive marine biodiversity and interconnected coastal economies. And I believe that this makes the regional cooperation here not only valuable, but also very essential. The region has already opportunities and a strong foundation for the regional environment, cooperation, and scientific collaboration in maritime governance. And through the work of the IMO, REMPEC, UNEP, the European Union, regional frameworks, and also the Barcelona Convention, many national institutions, research centers, and NGOs. I think the region is uniquely positioned as a laboratory, as Carlos defined just a moment ago, to become a global example of how cooperation can support quieter and more sustainable shipping in the region. Next slide, please. And IMO is contributing to this work under the global regulatory framework, which we can group around 4 building blocks. The first one is the UN guidelines, the first guidelines that was published in 2014, and based on the 10 years of knowledge accumulation and progress in science, the revised guidelines was published in 2023, which is putting a lot on its president. Basically, it is now applicable to ships of all sizes and types, and proposes the reduction measures for the design and operations of the ships. And there's a new guidance for the improved voyage planning and the marine protected areas. And it introduces the UN management planning with 2 templates. And also it gives the strong linkage between the energy efficiency and the UN reduction. The third pillar is the UN Action Plan, which is currently implemented by the IMO. And as Aurélie also mentioned, and so I will not be repeating much, but the experience building phase is the fourth pillar, which we are currently in, which started in 2023 and agreed to be extended to 2028 by the recent MEPC 84. And also, Aurélie mentioned, but I just want to highlight a very important second IMO workshop on the linkage between the energy efficiency and urine reduction. It was held in November 2025, and many of the panelists here were also there presenting, and their presentations and the report can be accessed in the link that I put on the slide as well. And also the technical guidance was approved in MEPC 84 for co-optimizing the energy efficiency and urine reduction during the ship design and retrofit stages. And global urine study and also the MEPC 85 timeline was also mentioned by Aurélie, so I will not be repeating all these. But I will pass to the project. Next slide, please.
Slide is there.
Next slide, please. Yes. And as for the partnerships, it is a joint effort of the GEF, Global Environment Facility, UNDP, and IMO to increase the uptake of the revised guidelines by eliminating several barriers. So these barriers and challenges are particularly significant for the developing countries, and they require a coordinated global response. Next slide, please. GLONOIS partnership was launched in 2024 and at global, regional, and national levels in 6 beneficiary countries, including Argentina, Chile, Costa Rica, India, South Africa, and Trinidad and Tobago, with 3 twinning countries, and they include Georgia, Madagascar, and Malaysia, focusing on 4 areas: raising awareness, capacity development, developing the UN toolkit, policy analysis and recommendations, and creating a global strategic partnership, which are all continuously supporting the implementation of the UN Action Plan, which I mentioned in my previous slide as a third pillar of the IMO regulatory framework. Next slide, please. And over the past 2 years, we have reached around 2,000 stakeholders in more than 20 workshops, strengthening the national coordination and governance mechanisms. Next slide, please. And the gap analysis of international, regional, and national UN policies was completed together with the technical needs assessments and also by the contribution of Valérie, thanks to her as well. And it provides the gaps in 3 dimensions: governance and policy, science and data, and capacity and implementation. It has significant conclusions and findings and comparative analysis, especially for the international policies. And the report, which is very comprehensive and very guiding, can be found in our website, which I will give in the last slide. Next slide, please. Now I will mention about the UN toolkit that has been also stated in the Hague Declaration as well, that Aurélie also mentioned. So the UN toolkit is the core output of the project, designed as an interactive platform for continuous capacity development. Now you will be watching a very short video for introduction.
Welcome to the IMO Underwater Radiated Noise Toolkit, a one-stop shop for everything related to the implementation and uptake of IMO revised guidelines. It is an online platform that anyone can access upon registration, and it offers both accessibility options as well as Spanish and English versions. This is the main page. You can find 3 levels that structure the educational content of the toolkit. Here is the experience building phase repository, where all submissions to the EBP have been compiled. Below is an overview of the toolkit, including the different tools that support each level, covering raindrop light and raindrop, as well as the main outputs of the GloNoise partnership. Going back to the different levels, which are the core of the toolkit. Level 1 covers the foundations of shipping URN and is ideal for users starting in the URN field who want to better understand the technical aspects and implementation of the revised guidelines. Level 2 and 3 focus more on URN risk assessment, from basic perspective in Level 2 to a more advanced one in Level 3. Let's start with Level 1. If you click on any page, you will be directed to the content view where you can find text, images, interactive videos, and activities. Moving on to Level 2, which is supported by Raindrop Light. This is a map-centric URN risk assessment tool. It uses basic principles, tools, and methodologies to support users who are new to the field, particularly in contexts where data may be limited or not readily available. It is also recommended from an educational perspective for users who want to better understand the risk assessment process and the requirements for implementing different scenarios. For more advanced workflows, including regulatory and environmental risk and impact assessments, Raindrop under Level 3 can be used. Raindrop also runs in the browser, as shown here, but uses more advanced techniques, both from an acoustic and a data input perspective, to estimate the soundscape in a given area. This allows users to apply the same risk assessment frameworks introduced in Raindrop Light, but with more advanced data workflows, resulting in more accurate outcomes.
I'm sorry, I think there is no sound anymore, but we can pass to the next slide. I hope that you can hear me.
Yes, we
because
can hear you now.
I have lost almost it. Okay, Valérie. Oh,
Thank
okay,
you.
that's a good relief at the moment. Okay, so that I can mention that the toolkit, of course, is a very new, new output of the IMO. So it was also developed for the capacity development. It's not only for the assessments, but also for learning exercises. And I also want to mention that it will be continued to be improved because it requires also improving and also validation, many things, right? But will be hosted and maintained by the IMO after the project ends. So now we are moving with our lead pilot countries, beneficiary countries, to the environmental risk and impact assessments using the toolkits with their national data. And recently in April, we have completed the 6 in-country workshops on the training on how to use the toolkit, and appreciate all of our countries' progress and achievement in this process for demonstrating a great collaboration actually throughout the project, which I also want to see the Mediterranean countries also to participate hopefully in the next phase of the project. So next slide, please. when I mentioned about the next phase as well, so the IMO was also planning for going with the next phase because the project was in terms of time and implementation period was quite short and with limited coverage as well. So the project is ending in December 2026. And we aim to shift the perception of the URN from a cost to an investment that can provide an economic return as well for the governments, ship owners, and the coastal communities as well. Of course, subject to the availability of the financial resources, which we're also looking for at the moment to continue with the next phase. The focus will be on scaling up the implementation, supporting more countries, and strengthening the regional cooperation as well. And knowledge needs to continue to grow, but it is not only alone enough, and we need the cooperation, implementation, and continuity. And I think the Mediterranean region is a very good spot for this achievement. And next slide, please. My last slide. I want to also inform you about our upcoming webinars for the launch and rollout of the toolkit, which will be held in June. Particularly this session in English will be on the 23rd of June, and the Spanish session will take place on the 24th of June. And we will be very happy to see you there as well. You can register using the QR codes in the slides. And we are looking forward to connecting for a deep dive session on the details and the features of the toolkit very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, 𝗧𝗵𝗲. That was very interesting to see all these developments at IMO level. And I really have to congratulate you and your team for such a huge effort. Carlos and I are very keen to test the toolkit as well as soon as we have some time. And I really think that that it would be extremely interesting what you said to count on Mediterranean countries for a next phase if 𝗨 can be extended. So thank you for this visionary presentation as well. And now I would like to present our next speaker, Ms. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗪𝗃𝗧. She is Monitoring and Assessment Officer at the Mediterranean Pollution Assessment and Control Program, MEDPOL, at UNEP MAP. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗪𝗃𝗧 is an environmental protection specialist and inorganic technology engineer with over 23 years of experience in environmental protection and sustainable development. She has a strong track record in leading complex environmental programs, facilitating intergovernmental negotiations, and driving impact-oriented policy implementation. She is skilled in resource mobilization, partnership building, and delivering transformative sustainability initiatives. Her work effectively bridges science and policy through environmental monitoring and assessment, along with contributions to the implementation on the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Alongside numerous scientific and policy assignments at the national level, she previously served as Secretary of the Montenegro National Council for Sustainable Development and as a Deputy Minister for Environment. In these roles, she led key processes such as the transposition of the EU environmental acquis into national legislation and policy frameworks, as well as the development and implementation of Montenegro's national strategies for sustainable development and integrated coastal zone management. Since 2017, she has been working with UNEP MAP, and since 2018, she has served as Monitoring and Assessment Officer responsible for marine environment, monitoring, and status assessment. Welcome, 𝗧𝗵𝗲.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you very much. Just one technical question. Are you going to project slides?
If you can do it, it would be better, but if you wish us to do it, we can do it.
I am not, maybe it will be the quicker if you project, because I was a bit in delay because of obligations here, so not sure how technically.
Don't worry.
Okay, good. Excellent. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'm really pleased that we have today opportunity also to exchange with you the developments under the policy framework of UNEP MAP Barcelona Convention when it comes to the noise assessment. Please, may I have the next slide? In these and few next slides, there will be just a short intro in terms of the governance structure and policy framework that is in place. So just to remind, IMAP, that is Integrated Monitoring and Assessment Program, it has been adopted by the contracting parties of the Barcelona Convention, like the flagship program of the United Nations Environment Program Mediterranean Action Plan in 2016. So 9 years after its implementation, first through the pilot phase, then through the initial stage, we come to important experience, which actually then resulted in the update of IMAP. That is now the third cycle of IMAP starting this year, and that will take place over the next 10 years. IMAP is the part of the ecosystem approach policy of UNEP MAP that is horizontally integrated in all strategic and policy frameworks. So last year in December, contracting parties meeting held in Cairo adopted the revised roadmap for ICA policy implementation and third cycle of IMAP implementation. Please, may I have next slide? There are several novelties included in the roadmap and in IMAP. Later on, I will show some of them of relevance for noise monitoring and assessment, but just a few highlights. ECAP vision by 2035 was agreed, and it includes addressing, of course, achievements, but a part of achievements, emerging challenges, risks and opportunities. Our ECAP roadmap originally was structured and built around 6 steps, and it continued to be like that. However, updated to address, as I said, new challenges, risks we are facing, and also to provide responses to the opportunities that we could foresee in terms of addressing the issues that we are currently facing with. The governance mechanism was also revised and further strengthened. So as you could see on the previous slide, our main pillars in implementing IMAP remain CORMONs. So these are correspondence monitoring groups for IMAP clusters, and these clusters are pollution and marine litter, biodiversity, and coast and hydrography. On the top, there is ecosystem coordination group that actually serves as a cross-cutting, interconnecting policy body. So all documents, all science policy-based documents and policy-related documents which address ICAP implementation and particularly IMAP need first to be validated, endorsed by ICAP before they are passed to the policy level consideration, that is thematic focal points and map focal points, and then contracting parties meeting. What is very relevant for IMAP is that now it included 38 common indicators, out of which 11 are new indicators. And among these indicators, there are 2 addressing impulsive and continuous noise that as of the beginning of IMAP in 2016 were included in IMAP, however, with the status of the candidate indicators. Candidate indicators does not mean non-implementing. We actually worked to set up the policy framework and the technical framework to gather scientific knowledge, mainly in collaboration with ACOBAMS and with as our partner for this field of action, and also relying on the progress in this area under MSFD implementation, but also through exchange with regional Cs. So the update of IMAP included revising definition where appropriate, just definitions as well, because in 2023 we actually delivered the new quality status report. The first one, initial one, was prepared in 2017. So based on that experience of 6 years, actually, we come to the situation that several just definitions and targets could be revised and more sound improvements put in place. This also included indicators addressing impulsive and continuous noise. Also for several indicators, assessment criteria were either set or further upgraded and revised, like it is the case for pollution. And then using these assessment criteria, baseline values and threshold values, we were in situation also to define just and non-just boundary values. Please, may I have next slide? I will not enter into details, but of course this presentation will be shared with you. So here you can see the roadmap for new revised ECAP policy and third cycle of IMAP implementation. So many of these elements that I actually explained are either from the governance point of view or from the thematic scope of the content are actually shown in diagram. Most important elements are addressing actually the key instruments for the assessing marine environment, that are thematic assessments, then implementation of regional plans measures. And as you know, there are several regional plans under Barcelona Convention, which are legally binding. Then national action plans developed in line with Article 15 of the Land-Based Sources Protocol, addressing the land-based sources. Then information system, regional coordination. So all this is actually aimed to culminate with the preparation and development of the next quality status report that is foreseen to be provided in 2031. However, still, there is really intense work in order to come to the report 2031, as it should be, to address several bottlenecks. So within these efforts, noise actually present important field of action where we need to build the capacities both at the regional and the national scales. Please, may I have next slide? So this slide is just to remind on the QSR, the first QSR initial one, 2017, and this is the link where you can see it. I will not enter into details. Please maybe go to the next one, the next slide. Also here, there is the link where you can find the 2023 Mediterranean Quality Status Report, which actually provides the integrated quality status report, but also you can find some thematic assessments like pollution, which are quite, let's say, extensively provided. Then there are the quality status report, executive summary, and the one prepared for policymakers. And it is important to say that actually this QSR 2023 was made available as the official UNEP publication. Please maybe go to the next slide. You can start, please. Okay, so this is just a reminder on the noise assessment included in the 2023 MED QSR that was prepared in collaboration of UNEP MAP MEDPOL, Mediterranean Pollution Program, the unit from where I come, and the ECOBAMS. So here you can see that we actually extensively relied on the data sets and the project results of relevance for impulsive and continuous noise, which were implemented by ECOBAMS, available in the ECOBAMS data platforms. And assessment methodologies were developed based on the progress made in establishing thresholds within the European Union technical group on noise under MSFD. However, adapting actually at that time the level of availability of the thresholds to the needs of assessment under the Barcelona Convention. So regarding impulsive noise, there was the threshold that we set to define what is the tolerable status. And for the purpose of this quality status report, the tolerable status of the environment is considered when 10% or less of habitat of noise-sensitive species is impacted by impulsive noise events over a year. We found this quite conservative. So for the years of 2016, 17, 19, 20, and 21, and for all 4 cetacean species that are assessed based on the data sets available, all 4 regions were below this threshold. However, in 2018, there were 1 region for which the proportion of affected habitats was higher than 10%. I need to repeat, to recall that this is initial noise assessment, and of course, later on we will see what we are planning to do in order to make it more reliable and more based on the scientific results. Please, maybe have next sequence. Yes, like for impulsive noise, there was also threshold defined for the continuous noise by building on the result of EU TG noise. So it is actually a threshold that is defined that no more than 20% of the habitat of selected species should experience noise levels which goes above the low, exceeding in any given month based on the average noise level for that month during the assessment year. So limited with data availability, and we actually selected month of July, given the highest level of vessel traffic and its frequency occurring during the summer. So if this month was not found in a compliance, then entire year, of course, could not be found like compliant with this threshold. So 2 sub-regions were likely. We use that wording likely and unlikely because, you know, there is significant work still to be done in order to be to provide the certain classification of the area in 𝗏 and non-𝗏. So 2 sub-regions were likely in 𝗏 when it comes to year 2020, and then other 2 sub-regions did not comply with the 20% threshold of impacted habitat over the monthly scenario. This was the reminder of the outcomes of the noise assessment under Quality Status Report 2023. Please maybe go to the next slide. So now we will just show up some elements of relevance for updated ICAP policy and IMAP over the next 9 years when it comes to the underwater noise. Please maybe go to the next slide. So within ICAP and IMAP, we have ecological objective 11 that addresses the underwater noise. And then within this ecological objective, we have 2 common indicators. I apologize that I did not delete the word in parentheses. It remained from some previous presentations. So this used to be the candidate indicators, but COP, contracting parties meeting held in December, decided to actually upgrade their status. So from the candidate to be now considered common indicators, that actually increases the level, let's say, of accountability, both at the national level and also the regional level, in terms of putting in place all means for implementation of indicator 26, that is defined as shown here on the slide: proportion of days and geographical distribution where loud, low, and mid frequency impulsive sounds exceeds level that are likely to entail significant impact on marine animals, and common indicator 27, levels of continuous low frequency sounds with the use of models as appropriate. Please, can we go to the next slide? Here, it is important within the revision of the 𝗧𝗵𝗃 approach, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 policy. What is reflected when it comes to the noise are actually elements of the progress achieved in setting the framework for these two indicators to be implemented. So this mainly consider the definition, establishment, and application of the underwater noise monitoring methodologies. And based on the experience within the QSR 2023, development and application of assessment methodologies, including just non-just boundary values and related classifications. Also, 𝗧𝗵𝗃 policy for over next 9 years identifies the crucial next steps where we need to progress. The key aspects really will be how these two indicators are going to be integrated into national IMAP monitoring and assessment programs. Then how we can further enhance monitoring and assessment methodologies. As you have just heard, these were the elements of the initial assessments. Now we need to see how to progress in terms of the threshold levels and the just non-just boundary values, setting both for impulsive and continuous noise. And the key aspect to support both national implementation and the progress regarding monitoring assessment will be how to increase the quantum and the quality of data on the underwater noise and related data management. Of course, the quality of data needs to come through the improved capacity for monitoring of the our counterparts at national level. Maybe go to the next slide. So in line with these elements that were included in the 𝗧𝗵𝗃 policy, then details are elaborated in the guidance fact sheets. So more operational documents, frameworks for two components of every IMAP indicator, including the noise-related indicators. IMAP guidance fact sheets, actually, they elaborate the policy context, the scientific context, but then it enters into details of monitoring, in details of assessment. So the first fact sheets for indicators 26 and 27, they were prepared in 2019. And that time were approved by METPOL, so Mediterranean Pollution Program, the unit under which we actually monitor these two indicators in collaboration, of course, with other components of UNEP MAP and partners like ACOBAMS. So these indicators, for this indicator, the initial guidance fact sheets were prepared in 2019 and approved by METPOL focal points. However, keeping these two indicators in the status of the candidate. As of last year, we further elaborated, upgraded with support of ACOBAMS guidance fact sheets for these two indicators. So further upgrading just definitions, targets, scientific references, policy context, indicator definitions, along with the units, spatial and temporal aspects of their monitoring and assessment, statistical data elaboration, assessment methodologies and scales of assessment, also improving monitoring methodologies based on the experience that evolved from 2019. And of course, they also identify gaps and uncertainties that we need to address. These guidance fact sheets, they were discussed at the meetings, first of the correspondence group on pollution monitoring last May. After that, at the meeting of METPOL focal points, like the significant high level of the national representatives under Barcelona Convention responsible for METPOL program. And after that, they were also discussed at the ecosystem coordination group in September, and then MAP focal points. So after that, actually, COP decided to upgrade the status of these two indicators from the candidate to common obligatory mandatory status for these two indicators implementation. Please maybe go to the next slide. So here, actually, I will just show up what actually remains like the top priority that we are attempting to address. So please maybe go to the next slide. These are just some tabular presentation of the key elements that we need to have in place for all indicators. So a part of definition of indicator, just definition, just target, guidance fact sheets prepared, assessment criteria, threshold values, then data standards and dictionaries, and where appropriate, monitoring guidelines. Monitoring guidelines enter. Yes.
Sorry, if you could just wrap up, and your time is almost over.
Okay. Okay, so data standards and dictionaries and guidelines like monitoring guidelines remain the most, let's say, important and significant element. Also, if you just quickly scroll down, you will also see in this presentation the slide which show up comparison between the IMAP and MSFD. You will see very good compatibility. So we can go to the next slide, and then we go to the next slide just to highlight the importance of. Yes, please, we can go to the next slide, please. So for all our indicators, we have the repository and data management within the IMAP info system. For these two indicators, they are not part of the IMAP info system. We relied on the databases that is available on the 𝗧𝗵𝗲𝗁. So for us, together with 𝗧𝗵𝗁, it is first of all to see how we are going to continue managing data, reporting and use of data, and then based on that to progress with building the thresholds, actually upgrading existing thresholds and assessment methodologies. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Jelena. This was very informative, crucial information for this webinar and for the members. We are following up all this work, and we are trying to support the members and the national focal points through the intersessional working group on CSO7. So I just want to take the opportunity here as well. If as a national focal point you're interested in participating in this intersessional working group, then please leave us a message. And Jelena, just this was so much important information for the guidance fact sheets, which include very important technical information. Where can people find the guidance fact sheet?
They are available as the documents of UNEP map. So in UNEP web docs, they should be available, but of course they can always contact me. A part of that, there is the ongoing, it should be short-term completed, actions from our colleagues from 𝗵𝗱𝗃, so Center for Communication, to make this all guidance fact sheets, updated guidance fact sheets available at the dedicated web page, most likely the one that is for the QSR 2023. So at this moment, write to me, I'll share whoever is interested, and in short term, they will be available on the web page at 𝗵𝗱𝗃.
Perfect.
Website.
Thank you so much, Jelena. So in that case, it is now my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗪, Environment and Sustainability Senior Project Officer at the European Maritime Safety Agency. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 holds a bachelor's degree in physics, a master's degree in space science, and a master's degree in humanitarian action. Before joining the European Maritime Safety Agency, he gained extensive international experience working for the European Space Agency in Germany and Spain, for the Imperial College London in the UK, and for the European Commission's Joint Research Centre in Italy. At EMSA, 𝗧𝗵𝗲 leads the development of initiatives related to sustainability and environmental monitoring, with a particular focus on decarbonization and underwater radiated noise. He's responsible for coordinating the European Maritime Transport Environment Report Programme, a flagship initiative providing knowledge and analysis to support EU policies for a greener and more sustainable maritime sector. Welcome, 𝗧𝗵𝗲. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Valerie. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me to both OceanCare and REMPEC. Can you confirm that you see my slides?
Yes, we see it and we hear you well. Thank you.
So let me kick on, and Valerie, feel free to cut me out if I'm talking too much. So back in 2022, with the objective really of supporting the European Commission and its member state administrations, we launched the 𝗪𝗲 project, which was meant to address four main questions. Firstly, where are the noisiest and also the quietest areas across European seas? Secondly, related to that, which regions have the highest sound energy density and why? Thirdly, what are the absolute and relative contributions of different vessel categories to URN in the European seas? And finally, can we predict how greenhouse gas mitigating measures and underwater irradiated noise mitigating measures may affect the future noise levels in European seas by vessel category all the way up to 2050? So we know that today policymakers and decision makers are no longer asking only for maps. They are really asking for indicators, and we've seen this in Yelena's presentation before, which are really robust enough to support decision making and are comparable between areas and member states. And I see that this is reflected also in the common indicators which were presented earlier on. So what you see here on this slide is 8 years of EU soundscape mapping at 63 Hz, so covering periods from 2016 to 2013. And one of the major achievements of the project has been really the development of a consistent mapping framework across all European sea regions, which allows both spatial comparisons and trend analysis over time. So not only can we observe how sound pressure level can vary across regions and across years, but interestingly, we can also identify which ship categories contribute the most to this soundscape. And this is where monitoring, I believe, starts becoming much more than just a scientific exercise. It really becomes part of the regulatory infrastructure. So if we zoom a little bit more on the Med Sea, we know that it's a complex region to analyze, so I will not repeat what has been said earlier on. What we show here is a map between the difference between 2022 and 2023 at 63 Hz, and we can see higher sound pressure levels along vessel tracks in some of the Adriatic Sea during 2022 compared to 2023. At the same time, in the Marmara Sea and in some areas in the southern Mediterranean, they appear quieter in 2022 than in 2023. So within 𝗪𝗲, we calculated sound energy density for the Med Sea as a whole. But one possible next step could be for more localized analysis, for example, over area over specific sound pressure level assessments. Now, I really don't want to overwhelm you with too many figures and stats, but here I want to show you something interesting regarding the type of analysis that becomes possible using this data. So when we perform a quarterly trend analysis on sound energy density, we see some very clear seasonal pattern emerging. And we can also see this for the different types of vessel types. So we can see that for passenger vessels in particular, we pick up the signal of the impact of the COVID-19 restrictions beginning in 2020. You can see that in the yellow curves. And Okay, we have to keep in mind that the scales on the y-axis differ between plots, and we can observe that at 63 Hz, cargo ships and tankers and gas carriers are by far the most dominant contributors, while at 125 Hz, this changes a little bit, and the ro-ro vessels become the main contributor. We can also observe increasing trends for container ships, including particularly strong increase in 2022. Beyond monitoring the past and present conditions, the project was one of the first large-scale efforts to explore the what-if scenarios for the future. So more specifically, what we did was we modeled 4 scenarios for 2030, 2040, and 2050. We had a business-as-usual scenario. We had a scenario where we introduced the mitigating measures only for greenhouse gas. A third scenario was introducing mitigating measures for underwater radiated nozzles only. And the fourth scenario was a combined scenario, so putting together the greenhouse gas and the URN mitigating measures. And the combined scenario is especially interesting and hopefully could be the most realistic going forwards. And what we see is that many of the measures that reduce greenhouse gas emissions may also reduce underwater radiated noise, for example, lowering operating speeds, improve propeller design or performance, better hull design, and more efficient operation overall. And the overlap is very important because it clearly signals that decarbonization and underwater radiated noise reduction do not necessarily compete with another. So in many cases, they reinforce each other, and that creates real opportunity for large-scale impact. Now here again, we can see the mitigation performance for each vessel category, quantified as a percentage related to the business as usual scenario. So just a couple of things to pick out. These graphs are specific to the Mediterranean Sea. We can see that in the greenhouse gas scenario, reductions of up to 60% are observed for the ro-ro passengers and the cargo vessels, which, if you remember, were the major contributors. While the tanker and container vessels actually show increases in URN, just looking at the greenhouse gas scenario. In the URN scenario, we see a strong continuous reduction across all ship types, reaching values to between 50 and 80%. And in the combined scenario, we observe an overall reduction that is in the black line, around 50% in URN, which is very positive. However, if you pick up the different colors, you can see that the signal differs between ship categories, and especially for tankers, if you see the green line, where little mitigation is observed before 2040. So my last slide, this is just a snapshot of what Navizon can offer. Really what I want to stress is that the framework can support member states' administrations in understanding the shipping contribution to URN through a harmonized approach that is applicable across all regions. We really have now the ability to track this pressure consistently over time, and importantly, we believe there are the analytical tools to evaluate also the potential mitigating measures through the forecast scenario. I think the important question now that I want to share with you is how really this type of information can best support the policy, the management, and operational decision making, including, of course, within the context of UNEP MAP and its common indicators for URN. And hopefully we will have some time to discuss some of these aspects during the roundtable today. And finally, because firmly believe that continued progress will require collaboration across science, policy, and very importantly, industry as well. I'm pleased to announce that we are hosting a workshop on URN in October, on the 12th and the 13th of October, here at EMSA in Lisbon. If you're interested to participate, please just drop me a message and I'll be very happy to provide additional information to you on how to attend and more details. So yeah, that's it from me. Thank you very much. I hope I have been in time.
Yes, thank you so much, Gsami, for this very insightful presentation on Navison and the huge opportunity that we have to link the GHG reduction measures to underwater noise reduction measures, and also for informing us about the workshop in Lisbon. I hope to see many of you there. It will be a great opportunity to dive deeper. I think due to the time, I think we will already go to the next speaker. So let me introduce Mr. 𝗨𝗱𝗱𝗲𝗵𝗿𝗀, underwater noise and marine mammal consultant at SINAI and member of the 𝗧𝗵𝗲 CMS Noise Working Group. 𝗨𝗱𝗱𝗲𝗵𝗿 is a marine biologist at SINAI, specializing in marine environmental assessments, underwater acoustics, and cetacean conservation. He has been a key contributor to 𝗧𝗵𝗲's noise management activities for over a decade, leading the development of the 𝗪𝗏𝗏 platform and co-authoring the first basin-wide assessment of noise hotspots in the Mediterranean Sea and the first technical assessment of underwater noise for the UNEP map in 2023, which Jelena already mentioned. He's a member of the Joint Noise Working Group, 𝗧𝗵𝗲, 𝗧𝗵𝗲, and CMS since 2013, represents the 𝗧𝗵𝗲 Secretariat at the EU TG Noise since 2015, and at REMPEC Intersessional Working Group on CSO7 since May 2026. His work spans underwater noise monitoring and assessment, marine mammal ecology and bioacoustics, and the implementation of the EU Marine Strategy Framework Directive. 𝗨𝗱𝗱𝗲𝗻𝗃, welcome, and please, the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much. Probably too long biopic. Thank you.
No.
Okay, I'm sharing the screen.
Yes, we can't see it yet.
Yeah.
Can
you
your
see
screen?
it?
We can see your screen. Yes.
Good.
Now.
So I prepared just one slide. Probably I will show another screenshot later, but I will try to keep it short. So thanks, OceanCare, for organizing this and for inviting me. I'll talk to you about 𝗧𝗵𝗲s and the actions of 𝗧𝗵𝗲s regarding underwater noise to give you an overview of what the the agreement is doing. So I think everybody knows 𝗧𝗵𝗲s, but I will give a short introduction. So it is the agreement on the conservation of cetaceans on the Black Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, and a short portion of the Atlantic Ocean just outside Gibraltar. And it was established in 2001, and since then the agreement is pursuing several objectives, all related to the conservation of cetacean species and the conservation of their habitats. So regarding noise, the agreement is doing well, several actions almost since the beginning. So I prepared three different parts of the 𝗧𝗵𝗲's action on the underwater noise. One concerned the policy framework, then some mention of the activities of the working group, on underwater noise of 𝗧𝗵𝗲, which is actually a joint group with also the sister agreement in the Northern European waters, which is 𝗧𝗵𝗲, and also the participation of the CMS, so the Convention on Migratory Species. And then I will say something also about the 𝗪𝗃𝗲𝗄𝗏 platform. So concerning policy, since 2004, the first meeting of the parties of the 𝗪𝗃𝗲𝗄𝗏 agreement, there was the first resolution adopted by parties about underwater noise, and then there has been one resolution adopted at every meeting of the parties of 𝗪𝗃𝗲𝗄𝗏 since then. So the last one is the resolution 9.15 adopted in 2025 in the MOP in Cyprus. So this shows the commitment of parties, but I would say the overall community within 𝗪𝗃𝗲𝗄𝗏, which is done not only by parties but also by a scientific committee, by partners, scientific partners, and by external experts who are, for example, participating in the different expert groups, including the joint noise working group. The Secretariat since early 2000 have been promoting several activities, including the development of methodological guidance for the implementation of noise mitigation guidelines, for example, in the agreement area. And also a certification scheme for example, MMO and PAM operators, in order to build a legal framework that would guide all the players of these communities, so the noise generators industry, but also those people involved in mitigation to operate under a consistent framework. The action of 𝗪𝗃𝗲𝗄𝗏 has been addressed not only towards continuous noise, but on both impulsive and continuous noise, actually. And actually, in early 2000, the main interest was towards impulsive noise because they impulsive noise generating activities were those that may cause the more apparent impacts, like, for example, strandings, if we think about the use of military sonar that have been correlated with mass strandings since the late 90s, but also pile driving and other impulsive noise generating activities because of the forecasted development of maritime industry from 2000 to today. So if we think about the development of industry like offshore wind farms and so on, that's why the main interest was on impulsive noise in early 2000, but since 2010, 2015, actually, there has been also a progressive integration of mitigation frameworks related to continuous noise. So, for example, integrating into 𝗪𝗃𝗲𝗄𝗏's resolutions the guidelines from the IMO regarding the reduction of underwater noise from shipping, and also an integration of TG noise guidelines and developments at large regarding continuous noise. So concerning the policy framework and this part, well, there are also other actions such as, for example, the promotion and organization of workshops with navies. So this was a very difficult thing to organize. It took a lot of time. The first workshop was organized in Toulon in 2019 with only 2 officially represented navies, the French one and the the Italian one. And another one took place in Toulon again in 2024. And there was much more participation with representatives of more navies, including from Northern Europe. We had also the Royal Navy from UK, some representatives of NATO, and others from Bulgaria, for example, and more, which I'm certainly forgetting about. But anyway, so there are resolutions about underwater noise adopted at every MOP, and then more concrete actions promoted, such as the development of guidance, the development of a certification framework for MMO and PAM operators, and also specific activities like workshop between the scientific community and navies. Going to the second part of this presentation, so just briefly mention some of the activities of the working group on underwater noise. So as I said before, it is a joint group with scientists and experts and people from stakeholders at large that come from different geographical areas, so not only the Mediterranean and Black Sea, but also from Northern European seas and potentially from outside Europe, because in this group, the CMS also participates, which have a worldwide coverage. And this group is done by, if I remember well, around 20 to 25 members today, and I am a member of this group. We are involved in different kinds of activities, especially in giving advice and sometimes working more actively on the development of different tools. So I can remember in the last year the development of the so-called CMS family guidelines on impact assessment on underwater noise. But also members of this group were involved in the advisory board of different European funded projects, such as 𝗨H𝗱𝗲, 𝗨Ｈ𝗱𝗲2, and 𝗨H𝗱𝗲𝐶s, which were focused on the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. And also in activities such as the first assessment on underwater noise that 𝗂𝗏 coordinated in cooperation with UNEP, and which Jelena talked about in previous presentation. And in general, members can be consulted to be the liaison with other international agreement fora in general. So UNEP, DigiNoise, and more. So this is it, more or less, concerning the group. And then I will say something about the 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏's platform. So since 2012, the parties of 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 expressed an interest in developing a platform that would manage the information and data that would become available with time, and would be interesting in supporting the reduction of threats, for example, or human pressure on cetaceans and on their habitats. And since 2012, there has been several attempts to start this development, and since 2020, this platform is online. So the developer of this platform is the CNA company, so the company I work in. So the company has developed this platform. It not only addresses underwater noise, because 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is meant to actually address cetacean conservation. So it is about data and information on all potential threats. So there are things about also bycatch, there are data about strandings and marine traffic and more. There are also data about abundance estimations and more. But with regards to underwater noise, there are two things that are interesting for this presentation, which are a module that produces two maps every year regarding shipping noise, and another which is about the noise register. Okay, so it was built to implement one of the recommendations from TG Noise, and is meant to collect the data in the Mediterranean and Black Sea from countries regarding the distribution in space and time of impulsive noise activities. And this is one of the link between 𝗪𝗃𝗻𝗄 and the European Commission on one side, but also UNEP map on the other side, because these tools, so for both continuous and impulsive noise, can feed the assessment that countries have to do either under the MSFD framework or the IMAP framework for the whole Mediterranean Sea and Black Sea, so not only European Union member states. So I will end this part with showing one screenshot, just because I saw some many maps shown by in previous presentations. So just to say that within 𝗪𝗃𝗻𝗄 there is this part concerning underwater noise, shipping noise. Sorry, it is producing two maps since 2023 per year. Okay, so in the screenshot you also see 2020 and 2021, but these were first trials. I had to say that the assessment done in cooperation with UNEP map used one of these first maps in 2020. So it has already been said, but we used a lot of the precautionary principle because everything was not set up yet, and probably, as we are starting seeing now with the improvement of the methodologies employed, probably the calculation done for the quality status report of UNEP map in 2023 were quite high concerning the indicators of the proportion of habitat which is affected by underwater noise. But again, since 2023 that the methodology has been developing, we are now defining a routinary.
If you could
I'm going
wrap
to
up,
learn.
I would.
But this was added at the very last minute. So just to say that we also have maps there, and we are very interested in discussing more with EMSA and other interesting bodies or persons about all this. And I will stop here. Thank you very much, and I will be very keen to respond to questions if any.
Thank you very much, Alessio. This was an excellent overview about the policy framework and the work done by the joint working group, and very interesting insights into 𝗪𝗃𝗻𝗄. I want to move on to the last presentation by Mr. 𝗪𝗱𝗶𝗱𝗲𝗍𝗂, founder and director of innovation at Quiet Oceans. Dr. 𝗪𝗱𝗶𝗱𝗲𝗍𝗂 is an internationally recognized expert in underwater acoustics with over 30 years experience. He received a Master of Science in Mechanics and Fluid Physics in 1995 from the École Centrale de Lyon and a PhD in Physical Acoustics in 2003 from the University of Paris. He started to work as a scientist for the French Military Center of Oceanography on acoustic tomography projects before acting as project manager for the French Ministry of Defense and senior scientist at the NATO Undersea Research Center. He founded Quiet Oceans in 2010 to address the issue of anthropogenic noise in relation with the emerging regulations and concerns for the marine life. He's also a member of the technical group on noise of the European Commission since 2010 and is regularly consulted by international organizations. So welcome, Thomas, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you very much for the invitation. Okay, I've been kicked out from my hotel room, so I hope that my headset is going to do a nice job in canceling the ambient.
We can hear you well.
Okay, thank you. I will share my slides. Oh. Share. Yeah. Okay. All right, so my presentation today is an example of a project which is called 𝗧𝗵𝗲. It's an initiative in the 𝗨𝗱𝗲 sanctuary, and we are developing a very pragmatic approach to develop acceptable and efficient regional strategies to reduce shipwreck and noise-related risks. So in the title, there is this word acceptable. And in the context of marine spatial planning, because this is what we're doing at the end, is to organize the activities at sea to reduce the different risks for noise and ship strikes. Acceptability means whether a strategy is considered as legitimate, meaning that the process follows clear rules, legal mandates, and sound scientific reasoning, so that the decision is seen as valid. It should be inclusive, so that the affected users and the local community, industry, and authorities are meaningfully involved, not just informed. Shall be fair. Cost, restrictions, and benefits address identified risks while minimizing the side effects. Actionable, so that you can implement it. The measure can realistically be implemented, monitored, and credible, so that the option is seen as likely to reduce harm to biodiversity and support conservation goals, not just shift the impact somewhere else. And in the project, what we put forward is that the data is key. It plays a central role in the decision process because it ensures objectivity. The assessment and decision are not based on opinions or common misconception. The data ensure that to cancel any bias. It quantifies things instead of qualifying decision factors, turning observation into measurable indicators. It supports impact assessment to estimate how activities may affect diversity and where risks are the highest, to focus on the hotspots. And able to compare alternatives, so we can, with data, we can test scenarios and choose the option that best balance ecological, social, and economical effects. And data improve credibility as well, decisions more trustworthy and possible to justify. So the data is in the heart of the project, and this is through our Ocean Planner tool, which is a marine spatial planning tool to assess cost and benefits of regional mitigation scenario. And I'm going to tell a bit more on how it works. So the platform basically takes data from shipping. It takes data from species distribution and is able to develop a baseline to calculate what are, in the current situation, what are the time spent to go from point A to point B, and how much fuel is consumed. And on the other face of the coin, it will assess the benefit, the situation, and the risks for the environment on three components: underwater noise, emission of CO2, and ship traffic. And Ocean Planner, since it's a very special planning tool, is also able to integrate scenarios and not species, as this is written. So it integrates scenarios, and it will process the shipping data based on the scenarios and provide the same 5 data information and compare it with the baseline to assess what are the costs in terms of induced data and fuel consumption, and what is the benefit or not benefit for the environment on underwater noise, CO2 emission. But this tool is nothing, it's not combined with a process. And 𝗧𝗵𝗲 idea was to really combine the process, to develop a process to develop that acceptable strategy in the 𝗨𝗱𝗲 sanctuary. It is supported by the 𝗨𝗱𝗲 initiative and the Partner 𝗧𝗵𝗲 𝗛𝗶𝗱𝗁, which is the French, how can I say, the French animation of the 𝗨𝗱𝗲 sanctuary. So the process is the following. There is an initialization phase where we first build a multidisciplinary working group that is representative of all stakeholders. And this step was supported by the French Maritime Council for the Med, which is a very official body in France to deal with that kind of issues. Then the second step is to present the baseline risk that has been assessed by the platform to the working group so that everybody shares the same level of knowledge. And then during this, the first working group, we developed some creative thinking methodologies to have a collective intelligence to develop solutions based on the baseline and the assessment of the initial risks. And then we enter into the second phase, which is iterative. So based on the scenarios that has been developed during the first working group, sorry. With Ocean Planner, we will evaluate them. Each of them will be evaluated, quantified, summarized, and then presented to a second workshop. So the result will be presented to the same audience, and then the audience will be asked to give their feedback on the acceptability based on the numbers that are produced. And if there is no agreement, then these scenarios will be updated at the light of the results. New scenarios can be also proposed. And then we do the loop again with we will reassess the new scenarios, summarize the results, and represent it into a third workshop. And then at some point, we end up to the third phase, which is the thinking and recommendation, where we will see how far we are on developing this joint developed strategy and make it aware to the public. So what is interesting in this initiative is that we combine the use of an independent data-driven platform and a process, an iterative process based on creative and collective thinking, involving all interested parties to objectively evaluate different management scenarios and converge toward a commonly acceptable strategy. And that's it for today. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Thomas. for presenting another very important tool and very practical tool as well. We have seen now different tools that are designed to support regulators and to ensure stakeholder participation, which is key in this process. So thank you very much to all our speakers for these extremely insightful presentations. We have heard in these presentations about ongoing international initiatives, regional monitoring and assessment efforts, technical developments, scientific challenges, and practical approaches for reducing underwater noise from shipping activities. A recurring theme throughout the presentations has been that although important uncertainties remain, there is already substantial knowledge, growing technical capacity, and a clear basis for moving forward towards stronger cooperation and action in the Mediterranean. And especially now that we have these new indicators which the contracting parties must implement through their IMAP processes. So looking at the time, I would now, instead of asking my questions to the panel, start with the questions from the Q&A to make sure we can answer them first. So I would start with a question for Russell. Alexidias asks, we learned about the different modeling scenarios and the impact of continuous noise generated by commercial shipping. Noting that the voyage planning is key to the maritime sector as it describes operational decisions during the voyage, what advice would you give to policymakers in promoting measures at regional level? And I, of course, invite others to also comment if they have a thought on this.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think Alex there has highlighted that voyage planning is a really key element. And I think what policymakers can do to help with making sure that voyage planning decisions kind of minimize environmental impacts and particularly noise impacts is to look at the whole kind of process of ships planning their voyage and the ports kind of receiving the ship and unloading. And I think there's a lot that can be done at a port level that would support slower steaming at sea. And we've seen the IMO kind of initiatives on just in time and projects such as the Blue Visby project, which tries to optimize the kind of fleet of ships that are approaching a port so that there's no waiting time. And I think if policymakers kind of help emphasize to ship operators that when they're voyage planning to meet GHG requirements, they should also think about noise and then also help liaise with the ports to improve kind of operational efficiency and look at some of these just-in-time type of systems, that would really help.
Perfect. Yes, I think this is a very practical example, right, with which the shipping sector and the public authorities will benefit for various reasons, as you mentioned. Are there any other panelists that would like to comment on this question? Okay, in that case, thank you, Russell. I would ask Yelena. So Michael Ainsley asks, in deep water, underwater sound pressure level is usually higher in the winter than in the summer. because of reduced interaction with the seabed in the winter. Did you take this into account in your assessment?
Okay, now you can hear me. No, this has not been taken into account within these initial assessments.
Okay, do you think this will be part of further development or?
I do not think about these details because I think about improving the assessment methodology. So most likely this will be the aspect to consider along with others. But now to say about these details, I'm not in a position.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, maybe Alessio wants.
Yeah, can I add something just very, very quickly? Yeah, because the assessment was done on the 𝗪𝗃𝗲 side. No, in that assessment, we use summer conditions. Why? That's because this is what we had available at that time. So basically, we know other reasons. But since then, as I was saying before, we are also producing maps for winter. So there is a winter and summer map, so 2 maps per year since 2023, and other developments to take into account several other factors that could not be taken into account for the first assessment done. Well, actually, it was done in 2022, unless, well, with the, let's say, political process, it came out in 2025. It was published in 2025. Yeah, so it's part of the improvements that are already being done, and yeah, to prepare for the next assessment cycle.
Valerie, just one, let's say, important. Yes, it is true that 𝗪𝗃𝗻𝗲 with support of 𝗪𝘱𝗀 was supporting technically this kind of expertise in undertaking assessments, but it is UNEP map assessment. There have been quite coordination and, directing about the elements that we are going to adjust, consulting with our contracting parties within UNEP map. So, just that kind of label remains under also our, for good and for what is not so good, responsibility.
Absolutely, it's UNEP map. It's the UNEP assessment. We support it technically.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this clarification. Does anyone else from the panelists have some comment? Okay, in that case, there is one more question. Just a moment. So to Sami from 𝗪𝗃𝗻𝗲, under which conditions is it possible to gain access to the maps shown in the Navison report digitally? For example, as NETCDF.
Okay, thanks for the question. All of the Navison data is freely and openly available to all EU member states administrations, as well as to regional sea convention affiliated administrations. If you are not a national administration, but you are supporting your ministry or whoever at national level, you can access the data as well, but this needs to be done through official request by the national administration itself. So I don't know if Ivan is still on the call, but we provided, for example, REMPEC a couple of months ago the data. The process is really straightforward and surprisingly light for us being a European Union institution. So feel free to contact me and I can give you the details of how to gain access And yeah, so it will be my responsibility to send you the data thereafter. So I'll make sure to give you all of the details. I don't know, Ivan, if you want to add something to this.
Thank you, Semmi. Thank you for that. Yes, indeed, I can confirm that REMPEC has very kindly been provided with all the data that was contained in the 𝗧𝗵𝗲 project relating to the Mediterranean. I take this opportunity to thank our colleagues at EMSA because this information will be very useful in our ongoing process to further address this pertinent and very important issue that is impacting our marine ecosystem in the Mediterranean. What I can confirm is that, as Semmi pointed out, in order to share the information, it was a very plain sailing process. I was also very much impressed with the cooperation found by Semmi in particular and all the EMSA colleagues. There is a lot of valuable information which I encourage others and also the relevant maritime competent administrations in our respective contracting parties to make use of such data when looking into this matter in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Semmi and Ivan. It's great to hear about this collaboration and coordination in order to really work together towards underwater noise mitigation. I have one more question for you, Semmi, from the audience, which is a little bit general, and I guess you have to find some specific words to keep your answer brief, but there is the question. Let me check. From 𝗵𝗰𝗀𝗀𝗃, how do you create your noise maps? Oh, you're muted.
Thank you, Valerie. I'll keep it very brief. We have developed a model. The model comprises of two main components. One is a source level algorithm, which takes into account the noise from the ships, so from the machinery and from the cavitation elements. And we have a propagation model as well, and then we end up with the sound pressure level maps. All of the details are within the final report that we have published. It's available on the net. There is a link to that report, which provides really all of the details on the model itself, on the assumptions, on the data used to drive the model in my presentation. Valerie, from my point of view, you can share that presentation to all, to everybody who's interested and who has attended this workshop. So all of the details are in there.
Great. Thank you so much, Semmi, for this valuable information here. So I just have to check quickly if we have another question left. So it seems that from the audience, there are no other questions. In that case, I would like to ask one question to all of you, to all the panelists. So we have heard about some mechanisms, but just maybe to have like A brief reminder here, so what mechanisms are currently in place to facilitate capacity building transfer for developing countries?
Should I start?
Yes, please, 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Thank you.
I don't know how to raise my hand. I'm sorry from the other panelists. So, I mean, when we are speaking about, of course, the developing countries and as a, capacity development project at the 𝗨𝗏, so we have developed this toolkit as a public global, good, which is something really, I think, important for its continuation and for the uptake. And it's also possible for the countries to develop their own maps by learning throughout the tutorials. And, this is for self-development, self-capacity development for the countries. But of course, not every country has one-size-fits-all approach. So their, internal governance is different. Their institutional structures are different. And the cooperation in terms of the countries, within the countries are very important, because sometimes we find that the data is with some institution, but the capacity is with another institution, and their exchange is also quite important. So the guidelines already foresee and put forward a reference chart for prescribing the rules for every maritime stakeholder. But it's not always easy to bring them all together in the same room and make them speak and communicate and produce something that is for their own good. So we have developed also a stakeholder engagement plan, I think, which is very crucial, especially for the the developing countries. So they have the questionnaire, the methodology, and they can just develop their maritime profile and start working in pieces in the subcommittees and bringing them together, as well as to address the issue in their countries. But it's very important to bring them together, because that's what we have also come across, that they learn when they come together what is actually being produced in the country. There are some research going on, but sometimes the administrations may also encounter this during these meetings. So I think the attachment, the communication is very important, and the publications of the project, especially this stakeholder engagement plan, the guides, and also the policy analysis that we have developed. I think it's also very important for the countries to understand what they have and how we analyze, what kind of questionnaire we have used for the national policy analysis. And also, I'm promoting the 𝗨𝗏 to some extent, but it is just something, the legacy that I also want to leave. And also, I think, the toolkit itself in terms of the learning modules and etc. is very important. And also, Russell, as mentioned, it is very important to have the leverage between the 𝗧HG and the UN reduction and the synergies. So these can also help the awareness and support practical implementation. And IMO also has some workshops and technical cooperation activities on the 𝗧HG and energy efficiency as well. So they can also be used as useful entry points for these discussions for the countries, for the developing countries as well. And I think there is also a very great spot for the innovation and operational implementation and for seeing the pilot demonstrations. So we are also hoping to go further in the second phase as well. And also some incentive approaches and practical testing of the reduction measures. So there are many of the platforms, tools, as you mentioned, and knowledge available there. And I think if we can make them available, as we did in the toolkit, like a kind of one-stop shop for all the UN matters, so that everyone can have a single entry and find the knowledge there to exercise. And of course, the global part is also required to bring more, momentum to the issue. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, 𝗧𝗵𝗲. Yes, we really saw during this whole webinar, there are so many resources now available, and it is really just a thing to reach out to the correct people if you have questions. And So would anyone else from the panelists want to comment on this?
Can I just add something? I cannot praise enough the work 𝗧𝗵𝗲 is doing under 𝗨𝗱𝗲. I was lucky enough to be invited to be a mentor for two experts, one in Costa Rica and one in Argentina, under an initiative of the IMO under 𝗨𝗧. And it is quite remarkable to share the knowledge and understand how much knowledge actually already exists in the developing countries. It's not a question of Europeans, in my case, just sharing, but it's also a lot learning as well. So I truly believe that this dialogue between the countries, between the administrations, is fundamental. And once again, I praise 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and all of the work that IMO is doing under 𝗨𝗧, and hopefully, it will be going on for some time. One other very quick comment, if I may, Valerie, and then I leave the floor to Jelena, is the availability of data. So it is very important that within all, of course, possible contributions, the data that we have must be used in an open and free way, because knowledge will be built on that open and free data. So I believe this is also incredibly important. In Europe, we have a model which, if I can make an equivalence based on the Copernicus model, if you spend a lot of data on the infrastructure, a lot of money on the infrastructure, and then you don't make available the data and information from that, then you're losing so much from it. So I encourage and I highlight the availability of an open and free data policy as well.
Thank you so much, Sami, for these important comments. And also, I really want to echo Sami's words regarding 𝗨𝗧. You're doing a great job, and it would be just a great success if it can continue, and also if we really can see a collaboration, coordination with the Mediterranean countries as well. So, Jelena, please.
Thank you, Valerie. I could also just echo what Sami proposed and could not agree more. Really, the data availability and the quality of data remains the key pillar for any progress to come. Also, continuous exchange, learning, so to improve the knowledge bunch of the experience and practical modalities, in particular regarding the science-based solutions that we should take into account both for monitoring and for assessment, should remain one of the main pillars constantly present in all our activities, policy and technical. From UNEP map here, what we are looking for is kind of the technical cooperation project that would actually help countries to start building the capacities. In addition to this, already available through ACOBAM, through different partners, but under IMAP, so that they can step up from the current stage. Because I have to recall that there have been quite high level of, let's say, reluctance of having noise like the mandatory component of monitoring. So it is the obvious, message that there is the awareness of the comprehensiveness and the complexity from all possible aspects about noise monitoring and assessment. So we have to see how we can support, to go over that barrier. Thank you. And just one small remark regarding the PowerPoint presentations. I presume all of them will be shared with the group participating in the webinar.
Yes, well, I would invite everyone that is interested in the presentation to contact us at info@oceancare.org, and we have all the presentations available. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one last question from the audience to Russell, which we want to ask despite running a little late. I hope you stay with us. Russell, I hope you have some more patience with us. And so there is one question. I can't see the name who asked it, but noise and collisions of large marine mammals with merchant vessels are intrinsically linked threats. What could be the measure that would be simple, verifiable, and efficient to reduce both threats beyond speed reduction?
Well, I think speed reduction is the measure that is most effective for reducing threats when we don't really understand the distribution of the animals that well. But in some areas where we do have good information on the distribution of the animals, then it's possible to make minor routing changes which can keep ships and whales apart, and that's certainly recognized as the most useful way of reducing ship strike risk, and it also reduces noise exposure. But the real benefit of speed reduction in terms of reducing noise is it reduces noise at source rather than just routing the ship somewhere else, which may reduce exposure for some populations, but obviously increases it in other areas.
Thank you, Russell. And the question was asked by Jean-Noël Druon. So in that case, I think we have no questions left, and I would proceed to the final conclusions. First of all, I would, of course, want to thank you very much. A big thanks to all the speakers and also participants for this rich and engaging discussion. Today's exchange has clearly shown that underwater noise is no longer an invisible or poorly understood issue. And we also heard that the Mediterranean is entering an important new phase with the adoption of underwater noise indicators under IMAP. While further work is still needed, particularly regarding harmonized methodologies, thresholds, monitoring infrastructure, and data collection, important foundations are now in place. So I would just want to highlight several key messages that emerged from today's discussion. First, regarding the IMAP evolution and thresholds. So the recent upgrade of indicators 26 and 27 from candidate to common indicators reflect progress in establishing these assessment frameworks, but further developments of thresholds and GES boundaries remains a key priority for the next IMAP cycle. These thresholds support an initial assessment, and further work is needed to improve data availability, refine threshold values, and strengthen future assessment. A key priority for the new IMAP cycle will be to further develop and refine threshold levels and GES and non-GES boundary values for both impulsive and continuous noise. Future work will focus on improving assessment methodologies, increasing the quantity and quality of monitoring data, strengthening national monitoring capacities, and upgrading the existing thresholds in collaboration with ACOBAMS. The objective is to build a more scientifically robust and reliable assessment framework for future Mediterranean quality status reports. The second topic is practical mitigation, especially speed reduction. In many cases, a specific measure can generate many positive effects on different aspects relating to the ecological footprint of shipping. A wide range of measures, especially improved technologies to progress underwater noise reductions, are more of a longer-term effectiveness due to the time required to become implemented at a large scale. The most effective measure reaching short-term results was reported to be reducing vessel speed. The formula presented about the relation between speed and noise emissions was highlighted to qualify for the large majority of the global fleet due to the use of fixed-pitch propellers. Data were shown from the 𝗪𝗱𝗲 project undertaken by the EU on forecast scenarios reducing greenhouse gas and URN emissions. Forecast scenarios addressing mitigation measures covered results from 2030, 40, and 50, as well as GHG only, URN only, as well as GHG and URN mitigation. It shall be highlighted that the results of the combined scenario are especially promising, as many measures such as lowering operating vessel speed, improved propeller and hull design resulted in a reduction of GHG and URN emissions. It was also mentioned that when it comes to seismic activities, it is important to look at minimizing sound level at source. Regarding monitoring and data gaps, we learned about existing platforms, both private as well as embedded with regional frameworks, all highly important, providing data and assessment relating to monitoring, but especially providing policy advice to react to address conservation challenges. It is important to build bridges between the EU and the Barcelona Convention framework, including regional bodies such as ACOBAMS. What can governments already do? We have heard a lot. We learned about the High Ambition Coalition for a Quiet Ocean and its objectives, the expectations, engagement in information exchange, and the way state representatives coordinate their efforts, as well as providing information about the collaborative group focusing on work within the IMO. So there is a need to address source at level. And regarding the most important policy developments to expect, we learned about the developments of within the IMO when it comes to the objective to reduce ocean noise generated from shipping, and that there is room for Mediterranean range states in the short as well as long term. The region could become a role model for regional cooperation to address a transboundary pollutant. There is a high potential, depending on the decisions upon phase 2 of the IMO Glow Noise project, for the Mediterranean range states to become a suitable spot for promoting involvement. Measures developed within the MSFD context are focused on an ecosystem-based approach. Threshold values are key to evaluating to whether good environmental status is achieved. The same applies for the wider Mediterranean region. Therefore, to achieve good environmental status relating to the underwater noise emissions within the Mediterranean, there is a need for coordinating actions for Mediterranean range states. And so these are our concluding remarks. I would like to sincerely thank all the distinguished speakers. It was a great honor to hear all your presentations. We hope the webinar has contributed to a sound understanding of the situation, identifying gaps, address opportunities, as well as potential ways forward. And I would like to conclude that the Mediterranean has always connected people, cultures, and economies. Our collective challenge is to ensure that it also remains a sea where marine biodiversity, including its endangered whale populations and other marine species, can continue to thrive. And with this, I would like to give the floor back to Mr. Ivan Samut from the REMPEC Secretariat for the final concluding remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Valerie. Distinguished speakers, colleagues, participants, as we come to the end of today's webinar, I would like to sincerely thank all the speakers, once again, moderators, and participants for your valuable contributions and active engagement throughout the discussions. Today's exchanges have clearly demonstrated that underwater noise is an important and a challenge for the protection of the Mediterranean marine environment, requiring continued cooperation between governments, international organizations, scientific community, and the maritime sector. The discussions have also highlighted that practical solutions and mitigation measures already exist, and that increased collaboration, awareness, innovation, and knowledge sharing will be essential to further advance efforts towards quieter and more sustainable shipping. REMPEC remains committed within the framework of the Mediterranean strategy and in cooperation with the UNEP MAP Barcelona Convention system to supporting regional dialogue and initiatives at reducing the environmental impacts of maritime transport in the Mediterranean. In this regard, I would like to take this opportunity to encourage all contracting parties and UNEP MAP partners to actively participate in the ongoing work of the intersessional working group established under the Common Strategic Objective 7 of the Mediterranean Strategy and very kindly coordinated by OceanCare, which addresses marine pollution prevention and reduction from ships, including emerging environmental challenges such as the underwater radiated noise. The active engagement and cooperation of all stakeholders will be essential in advancing regional actions and sharing expertise and best practices. Finally, I would like to once again express our appreciation to OceanCare, particularly Carlos and Valerie, but I know that they have a whole support team behind them and the technical team that has made this webinar possible, for your excellent cooperation in organizing this webinar, as well to all experts and participants for sharing your experience and expertise. We hope that today's discussions will contribute to strengthening regional momentum and future cooperation on this important issue. Thank you all, and I wish you an excellent rest of the day. Thank you.